Okay, hello and welcome to the Parsha class, Parshat Balak, 5785. Baruch Hashem, this year, as happens every once in a while, Parshat Hukat and Balak are not read together, so we have a little more of an opportunity to focus on the details of this Parsha, learn some of the very beautiful lessons that we see in the Torah here. Uniquely, this parsha is not told until the very tragic conclusion. Is not mostly told in the in from the perspective of the Jewish people. We are instead given the perspective of Bilaam Harasha, the evil prophet, non-Jewish prophet of Bilaam, who attempted to curse the Jewish people, and until Hashem put words in his mouth to bless them instead. So let's, without wasting any time, let's get right into it. There's quite a bit to say, a lot of lessons, Baruch Hashem, that we can gain from the parsha this week. So this is the seventh parsha in Sefer Bamidbar, and it starts in chapter 22 in the book of Numbers. Chapter 22, verse 7 already. The king Balak has sent for this prophet Bilaam to go and curse the Jewish people, and he sends elders to sort of convince Bilaam to do this job, to take this on. And the verse says, "Vayelchu ziknei Moab ziknei Midian," the elders of Moab and the elders of Midian went together. They're usually arch nemesis, but whatever it is. So they joined up together to they went Kasamim Biadam. They had certain kinds of gifts. These Kasamim, the divinations in their hands. Ve'avo el Bilam. They went to Bilam. Vidabru elav, and they spoke to him divrei Balak, the words of Balak. So they went and told him what they were supposed to tell him. It says Rashi here, and what's going to be interesting in our class today is we're going to have a lot of Rashis. And then we'll see how much deeper his commentary is than you might first imagine. So it said Ksamim bi'adam, they had these divinations in their hand. Kol mene ksamim, they had all kinds of stuff, all kinds of little, I don't know, it's, what are they called? Um, crystal ball or whatever, voodoo, all kinds of whatever works, whatever they thought might work, palm reading equipment, Ouija boards. They brought it all with them. Shlo Yomar Ein Klei Tashmishi Imi. So he can't say, I didn't bring my stuff. I didn't bring my tools. I forgot my tool belt. And the last time I was cursing somebody. Divrei Acher, another explanation. Kesem zeh natlu biyadam zikne Midian. So the elders of Midian took certain of these kinds of things. Amro im yavu imanu b'pam hazot yesh bo mamash. If he comes with us this time, he has in him mamash. He has something worthwhile in him. V'yim yidchenu ein bo to'elet. And if he does not, if he pushes us off, he has no to'elet, no purpose. We're going to translate. Lefichach, and therefore, k'she'amar lahem linu po halayla, once he told them, stay here a night, Amru ein bo tikva. We have no Shanamar v'yeshu sari moav im bilam, and that's why the next verse talks about how the elders of Moab spoke to Bilam. So it looks like the elders of Midian just disappeared. What happened? Aval zikne Midian halchu lahem. They left. They saw that there was no hope. So what's interesting is there are three different languages, not languages, three different words being used for pretty much the same idea. In other words, if Rashi is saying that they left because they didn't see any, you know, any worthwhile uh, ability in Bilam to that's worth staying for. So then, why are there these three different words? These three different words again, just so we know, is they wanted him to have mamash. They wanted him to have some sort of substance. They wanted him to have toelet, which is a purpose. And then the last word is tikva, which is hope. So he didn't have any of these somehow, and they left. So it's quoted in the name of Rabbi Akiva Eger and or in the name of the Vilna Gaon. Either way, it's a beautiful idea. It's quoted in the Talmud Orot amongst other places, this idea that Rashi quotes this Tanchuma, this midrash, and it says Divrei Rashi halalu tmuhim biyoter. These are very strange words of Rashi. Ukvar nevochu bahem mefarshim rabin. There were many different commentaries who tried to explain it. V'hine al hakesher bein Moav Midian kvar heksher Rashi. B'tchilat Parsha, Rashi already mentioned that these two, like I said, these two arch nemesis joined forces against the Jews. V'alo me'olam hayu sonim zeh zeh. They hated each other. And Midian shel Yisrael asu shalom b'neihem. And once they saw and were afraid of Israel, they made peace amongst themselves, as often happens. Uma ra Moav litol eitza b'Midian kevan other in ways other than how the world works. Manhigam shel elu b'Midian nitgadel. So let's so they wanted to hire. So they saw that the Jewish people were successful because of their ability to speak, right? That's different than other nations. Other nations, in other words, pray, right? So Jews are saved because of their prayers, whereas other nations are successful because of force and battle and war, and that was different in how the Jewish people could be successful. So lechora av divarim elu tmuhim. So these words are very strange. Harei ma'achar sheyadu zikne Midian ki kocho shel Moshe befiv. Once they know that Moshe's strength was in his mouth, his ability to pray. Ketzad chashvu lepoa al yedei diburo shel Bilam. So how are they going to rely on Bilam's ability to speak? Hello, Moshe Omed Kenegdo? Is it that Moshe somehow opposite him? The im hu yikalel azay Moshe yivarech. If he would have cursed, then Moshe would have blessed. Moshe harei namar b'chol beita naman. They saw that Moshe was different. So they didn't need just somebody to pray, somebody who had the ability to pray. They need somebody whose ability to pray was somehow on par with Moshe's. Baram Zigne Midian. He's takfu mahu godol malat Bilam. They thought, let's see how great Bilam is. Im gadol hu Moshe. He's greater than Moshe. Oh, efshar shavahu Moshe. Maybe he's equal. V'ulai b'madrega pchuta hu Moshe. Or maybe even worse. Maybe his madrega, his level is less than Moshe's. B'voam v'vilam v'yivakshu livchon madregato madregato. So they wanted to test Bilam's madrega, Bilam's level of prayer. How are they going to do that? Moshe Rabbeinu Namar, it says about Moshe, Amdu v'ashma mam yitzava Hashem. He was able to stand. He was able to remain on the ground and be upright. and he would have these visions of Hashem, and Hashem would tell him what he was about to do. Hainu tzarachu lish'ol et Hashem yitbarach. That's he could even go and ask Hashem. V'im bevoam Bilaam hu yamar lanu shemuchan hu levo b'pam hazot. Azay siman hu shegadol hu memoshe. And if he's able, and if he is able to help by just asking Hashem to help, then he's greater than Moshe. And then yesh bo mamash. And that's what it means, that he would have some sort of substance. He has ability. Sharei ein hu tzarach litol reshut me'et Hashem keMoshe. He doesn't have to ask Hashem's permission like Moshe does. Ach im yedatenu. Then you would know im yamar shetzarachu lish'ol et Hashem yitbarach. So if he says that he has to ask from Hashem, then it's a little bit less, and he has to like sort of knock on Hashem's door, as it were. As I simon hu sheshava hu leMoshe, then he's equal to Moshe. Umemela ein boto elet. Then we don't have in that case. He doesn't have the same amount of purpose. It's not a sure thing that he's going to be able to out-curse the blessings of Moshe. Maybe they're equal. Sha'af im yikalal. So even if he curses, lo hayazeh midato v'kocho ele machmad ratzon habora. Well, then you have to actually earn Hashem's. If they're equal, you need something else to sort of tip the balance. Ach b'shomim shebilam omar lahem linu po halayla. But once Bilam told them, stay here overnight, hevinu shehu pachot b'dragatot Moshe. That's when they knew that Bilam was on a lower level than Moshe. Why? L'chein amru ein bo tikva, and that's what they said. There's no hope. We have no hope. He is not going to save us. Sha'af im yomar lekala. Even if he wants to curse, hello Moshe yamod vivarech kenegdo. We've got him. He's only able to curse when he's sleeping, versus Moshe, who's able to receive Hashem's prophecy while in the standing position. Moshe hare b'madrega Gevoa Yoter. Moshe is a much higher madrega, much higher level. Yoter lechein hanichuchu v'helchu lahem. To manipulate or convince Bilam to come, because his help wouldn't be helpful. All right, so then they go, and finally Hashem says no. Then Hashem says yes, maybe you can go with them. We talked about this in other years. Famous comment from the Vilna Gaon, the different words for to go with somebody, meaning you can go with somebody sort of like you can like hang on to them, hang around with them, as opposed to really like go with them philosophically, agree with them, to be like one with them, to be an ally, as it were. Those are two different things, and so that's something that Bilam didn't really pay attention to, and he went with them anyway. And then at one point, he tells the messengers that even if Hashem tells him he can't go, if Hashem tells him to go, that he can't go, and Balak offers him his whole house full of gold and silver, he still can't come. And Rashi points out here. So let's look at the verse, chapter 22, verse 18. V'yan Bilam, and Bilam answered V'yomer el avdei Balak, to the servants of Balak, which, by the way, he treats them like servants. They aren't necessarily his servants. It could be that they are still the elders, right? Imite li Balak mulo beito kesef v'zahav. Even if Balak gives me his whole house full of silver and gold, lo uchal lavor al et pi Hashem. I can't transgress the word of Hashem. Elokai, my God, asot katana ugadol, to do great or to do little or great. And we talked about this a few years ago, also a famous comment from the Vilna Gaon about what it means, the difference between great and small in this context. Um, that he was able to put words in his mouth later on. Either way, Rashi here says, "Molo beita kesef zahav lamdenu shenafsho rachava." So from here you see that his soul was greedy. Umechamed mamon acherim. He really wanted all that money. Amarui lo litain li kesef zahav shelo. Really, I'm worth all of his money and all of his gold and silver. His whole house full of gold and silver is what I'm really worth. Sharei tzarech liskor chayalot rabot. Safak notzeach, safak ena notzeach, v'ani vade notzeach. If you would have hired anybody else, armies to fight, he might be successful. He might not be successful. If he hires me, it's a guarantee. Money back guarantee. They will be cursed, and I will be successful. That's what he says. Now, what's interesting is Rashi sees this from the words of of Bilaam, that he says, if he would have given me a whole house full of silver and gold, that shows that he really wants that house full of silver and gold. There is only one problem, and that this phrase is also used elsewhere in the Torah, happens to be in the oral Torah, in the Mishnah or Braita of chapter 6 in Pirkei Avot that we just finished with Mishnah Yomi. Chapter 6, the ninth piece there, there's a story about Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma. Pam achat hiti mechalach b'derech. One time I was walking on the road. Ufaga bi adam achad. I saw a man there. V'natan shalom. He said to me shalom. Chazati lo shalom. I answered him back shalom. Amar li. He said to me, Rabbi, meiza makom ata. Rabbi, what city are you from? Where are you from? Where you come from? And I said to him, I come from a great city of wise people and writers and rabbis. Amarli, Rabbi, would you come to me to live with us in my place? And I will give to you and I'll give you thousands of thousands, millions of dollars worth of gold and precious stones and ruby and pearls. Amarti lo, and so I said to him, Beni, im ata noten li kol kesef v'zahav. If you give me all the gold and silver, v'avanim tovot, u'margaliot sheba'olam, all of them, everything that's in the whole world, all the gold and silver, Eini dar el b'makom Torah. I only want to live in a place of Torah, so I can't move from my place. V'lo od ele sheb'sha'at p'tirato shel adam. So he gives them a few reasons, but then at the end he says, happens to be there's a pasuk at the Tehillim that says, Tov li Torah picha ma'afe zahav v'chesed. The words of your Torah are greater to me than thousands of gold and silver. Okay. But you see, there's a problem here, because Rashi learned from that similar type of phrase that Bilaam is rachav, that he's greedy, and here we have Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma using similar language, and nobody seems to say that he's greedy. He's praised for saying such things. We're quoting him in the Mishnah phrase. Even if you would give me all of this. So how come Bilaam says it and he's greedy? Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma says it and he's not greedy. What's the difference? I'm glad you asked. You're not the first. Yaakov Kamenetsky in Emet Yaakov asks the same question, and he answers: Im nigdakdek nira sheyesh shinui lashon bein she'amru shel Bilaam she'amru shel Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma b'Masechet Avot. We see that he is using the same language as Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma in Pirkei Avot. So what gives? So why is one a good guy and one's a bad guy? They use the same language. So Amarti li bini im noten li kesef v'zahav avanim tova margalo ein yidar el makom Torah. Hainu mishum shebilam natan mida ugvul lehachlata. There's a difference. Ki ulai im yitain lo balak shnei batim maleim kesef v'zahav. What did Bilaam say? If you would give me his whole house full. He didn't say all of the silver and gold. One house. One house. You can keep the others. Maybe two would be different. With one house, I'm not going to transgress what Hashem said. One house of silver and gold. Give me two houses of silver and gold. Okay, now we're talking. Like the old movies where the informer sticks out his hand, says give me he tells the cop, give me some money. So the cop gives him one $20 bill, two $20 bills, three. Okay, now all of a sudden I remember what I was trying to what I didn't remember. All right, so that sort of thing. So that's the kind of greed of Bilam, as opposed to Yosef ben Kisma didn't say, "Give me a house." He says, "Aval Rabbi Yosef ben Kisma medagish shefilu im titen liat kol haosher shebeolam." All of the wealth of the world, he's not gonna leave Torah. Af al pichein eni dar el b'makom Torah. So you have to look at the language. It's not just the comparison that of how much money. It's also, you have to look at the details of where this money is, what kind of money we're talking about. We're talking about the money of a house. Money of a house can be replicated. There can be many houses full of money. But if you say all of the money of the world, so that's all there is. Hashem's not making any more. Right? This is the only world that we need to know about. All right. Go a little bit further, and Bilam finally goes along. Hashem gives him permission, but at the same time, he goes along a little bit too enthusiastically, so Hashem punishes him, and he puts an angel in front of his path that Bilam does not see, but his donkey does see. And this is a famous incident where the donkey swerves left and right, and scrapes his leg, scrapes Bilam's leg a few times. And Bilam eventually gets very angry and starts beating the donkey. And then the donkey miraculously starts to speak. We spoke about this in the past as well. Also, in Mishnah in Pirkei Avot talks about this mouth of this donkey that was created in the beginning of creation. But that's not for now. Right now, chapter 22, verse 28. Chaf bet, chaf chet, says, V'yiftach Hashem et piha aton. Hashem opened the mouth of the donkey. In other words, it was given the ability to speak. It's not like donkeys generally speak. But Tomer leBilam, and he said to Bilam, Ma asiti lecha? What did I do to you? Ki hikitani zeh shalosh regalim. That you hit me these 3 times. And then they have an actual conversation. It's very strange, right? They have an actual debate back and forth, and Bilam explains why he was angry, and the donkey basically makes a fool of him, pointing out that he didn't do anything wrong. Rashi, again back to Rashi. Rashi says on this verse, Zeh shalosh regalim. These 3 times, we've got a problem. Says Rashi. Rashi's whenever Rashi comments on something, it's because something is a little askew. Something is not quite right here. One of the things that could have been different is the word regalim, which means in this case times. These 3 times that you don't get this in English translation, right? But regalim means times. I think the etymology of the English word regular comes from the word regalim, right? So these intervals, right? These 3 intervals. But there are a lot of different words you could use for times. Pa'amim is another word, right? So the Torah does not use that. And instead, Rashi points out, uses this word regalim. Rashi says remez, lo. This is to teach you a lesson. This is a hint. to something else. Atam mevakesh la'akar uma. You want to kill a whole nation? Hachogeget shalosh regalim b'shana, that celebrates 3 holidays every year, the 3 pilgrimage holidays. You think in your stupidity, Bilaam, that you're going to be able to curse successfully this nation that keeps these 3 holidays? By keeping these 3 holidays, it's impossible for you to be successful. After all, these holidays keep us alive. Good question to ask, as the Ketav Sofer does. Just these holidays? That's the only thing that protects us? Barashi remez lo ata rotza akor uma shogeget shalosh regalim. He quotes this Rashi. Says tzarich lehavin lama regalim v'lo sheshomrim Shabbat kol shana. Why these 3 holidays? Every week we have Shabbat. Shabbat protects us. Shomer Shabbat. Nearly alfi yedei shekatavti makom acher. I wrote it in another place, and it's the note here in bracket says re'el el pashat acher. So emor, right? So in another parsha, probably where it talks about the holidays. Then emor, he writes about this a little bit. What? So what is it, right? Ki shmirat Shabbat einu muchach shemishamer avor hamitzvah umamin bechidush haolam. The Shabbat is something that is normal for most civilizations. In other words, Shabbat can be, when it's incorrectly viewed, it can be looked at as a day off. It's been a rough week. We need a day off. Here Shabbat comes along and gives you a little recharge. There's nothing wrong with being recharged on Shabbat, but that's not what Shabbat is. Every civilization has a day off. Every religion, every culture. The Muslims have Friday. The Christians have Sunday. Already in Ketav Sofer's time, obviously, for sure. He was writing in the 1800s in Europe, right? So he knows that there's other cultures with days off. Rak shuvat ki kol adam ha'over al hashavua tzarach lishbot yom echad b'shavua. Every person who works needs to rest 1 day a week. Aval kishishomer et regalim. But those people who on a regular basis keep the 3 pilgrimage holidays, Sukkot, Pesach, Shavuot, v'hem gam kein l'mechavin k'Shabbat, and they treat it like the Shabbat, as we do, right? We have almost all the same laws for Yom Tov as we do for Shabbat. B'zeh mara ki eino shovat lehanachat gufo letovato. We see that we don't keep the holidays for our own benefit because it gives us rest. As many of us know, our holidays are a lot of work. It's a lot of effort, and we feel rewarded from the effort. Don't get me wrong. It's most people I know love the but that's not what we do. Pamim Yom Tov miyad acher Shabbat. Sometimes the Yom Tov is right after Shabbat, right? 3-day Yom Tov, as it's called, right? Umemela gam shmir Shabbat dilya lechavana ritzui lekiyam mitzvah Hashem. Our keeping the Yom Tov reminds us that that's also the reason why we keep the Shabbat. It's not for our own pleasure. It's for listening to Hashem's mitzvah. V'hashta iti shapir deramez lo shmirat gimel regalim u'shmirat Shabbat l'chud ein muchach ki osim bekavana l'Hashem. Everything we do for Hashem, and that's why this is a remez here to the idea of to the idea of the holidays. In other words, the holidays that are protecting us from Bilam's curse. The greatness of the holiday is that we keep it obviously for Hashem. There's no other logical reason to keep these holidays. We don't need that break. It's not an easy break to take. It's not like, 4th of July or something. It doesn't really require any kind of effort per se, right? There's got to stay away from the fireworks and protect your fingers, right? But aside from that, there's nothing you have to do for just a day off. But the holidays are more than just a day off. And the fact that we keep that shows that we also keep Shabbat, not because it's just a day off, a day to relax from a difficult week, even if it's an easy week and Shabbat preparation gets in the way. We do it for Hashem. We don't do it for ourselves. And by indicating that, that's the nation that Bilam is going to have trouble cursing, says a Ktav Sofer. Okay. Uh, Sorry about that. So Bilam finally gets to Balak. They make certain sacrifices. They try certain ways to curse the Jewish people, and after they make these sacrifices, Bilam tells Balak these words, chapter 23, verse 3. Remember, Bilam levalak hityatzev al olatecha ve'elcha ulai kare Hashem likrati. So stand here next to these offerings. I'm going to go to the side. Maybe Hashem will yikare, will appear to me, likrati, and will reveal to me dvar ma yareini he got vihigadati lach v'elech shefi, and he's going to tell me what I should tell you, and then he left. Maybe Hashem's going to show up. What a weird phrase. So Rav Hirsch, writing in the beginning of Sefer Shemot, chapter 3, verse 18. It's one of those beautiful Rav Hirsch comments that starts out like with a grammatical lesson, but tells us something much deeper. Nikra stems from the word kara, whose meaning, like that of kara, is to encounter. The basic meaning of kara, to call, right, always refers to an outside influence exerted upon us, an external force that exerts control over us, calls us, and thereby causes us to swerve from our intended or expected goal and turn in the direction it desires. Hence, this abrupt change of direction can be said to have happened by chance, mikre. Only calls us to turn in the direction intended by it. In these words addressed to a heathen ruler, this is Moshe speaking to Paro in the beginning of Shemot, right? In these words addressed to a heathen ruler, we find an expression used by God in the same manner that is later used by Bilam in describing the mutual relationship between himself and God. Ulai kare Hashem likratit, our verse, chapter 23, verse 3. V'anochi akare ko. And later on in chapter 23, verse 15. The biblical narrative, too, adopts the approach and uses the expression, V'ikar Hashem el Bilam, chapter 23, verse 16, and verse 4. In other words, this is the relationship between Bilam and Hashem, that Hashem appears to him, happens upon him. Bilam says, I will let myself be called. In other words, I will surrender myself to a power that lies beyond me, to the divine current, so that it should sweep me away, and I know not where. Bilam thought that his God too would obey a higher power, which from on high was able to make it chance that he and his God would encounter each other. And here's the main point here. Heathenism does not recognize the existence of true freedom, of autonomous self-direction, neither in man's relation to God nor in God's relation to man. Basically, everything is subject to physical compulsion. One thing overpowers the next, but has no power over itself. This view is the basis of the pretended or illusory power of Kesem. There's the magical incantation stuff that we actually mentioned earlier today as well. Balak attributed to Bilaam the power to bring down the anger of the gods on the people he hates. Bilaam admits to possessing this power and says, I will give up my own independence and entrust myself to the power that controls men and gods. Perhaps the gods, too, will be compelled to this, ulai kare, etc. God complies with this delusion, v'ikar Elokim el Bilam. Hashem actually does happen upon him, just like he wanted, just like he expected. Bilam already believed that he had subdued God when he was forced to say with his own mouth the very opposite of what was in his heart. Here, too, God at first allows Moshe to enter into the thick of heathen doctrine, right? Our deity, of whom nothing has been heard for 150 years, has now appeared to us because of the compelling force that rules over gods as over men, Nikra. There must be a reason for this. We must bring him an offering and perhaps assuage his anger. When Moshe speaks to Paro and says, we Jewish people need to go to the desert for a few days to celebrate, well, he's saying this to speak to a man who only understands that kind of relationship between God and people. And we're just trying to make everything cool with between each other, right? They're just trying to be all right and make sure that the gods are not too upset with us. They appeared to us, so now we have to appear to them. That's the idea. And that's the relationship that we see also between Bilam and Hashem. Then is the same way that Bilam expects for it to be, which is maybe he'll come, maybe he won't. Maybe he'll tell me what to do. No, Hashem doesn't force you to do what you don't want to do. You have freedom of choice, and that's our relationship with Hashem, the way we understand it. Okay, I think I have, if I'm not mistaken, 2 more pieces. I think we'll see. We'll do our best here. Okay, so chapter 23, verse 9. So this is already the beginnings of his curses that were turned into blessings. Every year when we learn Balak, I like to at least have some commentary on some of these things. So he says, chapter 23, verse 9, Kimerosh tsurim arenu. Umigabaot ashurenu, hen am levadad yishkon bagoyim lo yitchashav. He says, as I see them from the mountain top, gaze on them from the heights, this is a people that dwells alone, apart, not reckoned among the nations. Now, this is a blessing, to be apart, to be separate, to be alone, to be a loner, to be not as cool as everybody else, to be kicked out, to be exiled. That's a blessing. It says the Netziv in Hamak Davar. Lo kederech kol umma, the Lashon. We're not like every nation and language. Kishaholchim bagola, once they go into exile, umit'arvim ima hamagalim, they get mixed in, they get assimilated with the majority. Ota masigim bazeh ava v'chashivut kol echad beinehem yotem shayu nirdafim nifradim mehem. Aval lo kein am Yisrael kishahu levadam. We are able to avoid becoming assimilated and just wrapped up in the same culture as the culture around us, because of our aloneness, because of our ability to stay unique and to stay separate. It's an important point to bring up, short point, but an important point nevertheless, with the 3 weeks coming up after Shabbat this week, 17th of Tammuz, when we start preparing ourselves for Tisha B'Av, that if we have to commemorate it this year and fast on Tisha B'Av, it'll be a reminder of all the terrible things that have happened to the Jews throughout history, of from different exiles and tortures and tormentors and terrorists that have hurt the Jewish people for the last 3,000 years or so. But to one of the worst holocausts in many ways is the rate of intermarriage that we see amongst the Jewish people nowadays. Intermarriage and misunderstanding halacha and our relationship to Hashem. All of that is tragic, and God willing, we'll find ways to teach ourselves and each other to follow the Torah and to follow Hashem's way and to avoid this. But one of the most successful methods for that is to be to be yishkon, to dwell levadam, to be levadad, to be alone, to be separate, to sort of recognize and be proud of your unique history that's different, and your unique culture and your unique relationship to Hashem. Okay, so we go further, and there's more curses turned to blessings. And one of them is found on chapter 24, verse 17. Says there, Renu veloata. I see them, but not now. Velo karov. Asherenu velo karov. I behold them, but it's not so soon. Darach kolchav miyakov, a star leaves from Yaakov, Vakam shevet Misrael, and a shevet, a stick, a scepter, comes from Israel. Umachatz pate Moav, Vakarkar kol b'nei shet. It will destroy Moab, which is the foundation of all the people of Shet. Shet was the son of Adam and Chava earlier in history, obviously, and so this is seen as a prophecy of the end of days when Mashiach comes, God willing, soon. And Rashi points out derech kochav kitargumo, like the Targum, like Onkelos says, which means a king will come from Yaakov, not just a star, right? In other words, the king, Mashiach, will come from Yaakov. And that's another reference to Mashiach in the Torah. Shakochav over kechetz. And so he says what it is in Old French. V'kam melech roda umosho. So there's going to be a king who's going to be over everybody, right? Who and he's going to have the shevet. He's going to have the power of the scepter. In his commentary on this, Rav Chaim Kanievsky quotes the Mishnah Torah, the Rambam, in his description of what's going to be when Mashiach comes, in Hilchot Melachim, in Laws of Kings, chapter 11, Halacha Aleph. Hamelach Mashiach ati la'amod la'achzir malchut David. The king of Mashiach is going to come from the line, the holy line, the royal line of King David. Liyashna mimashla harishona. Uvona Mikdash is going to rebuild the Beit Hamikdash. Umekabetz Nidchei Yisrael is going to gather together all the lost Jews. V'chozrim kol mishpatim. Beyamav Shahayu Mikodem, all the Jewish law will be back as it should be. Makrivin Karbanot, we're going to have sacrifices. Ose etc. So there's a long piece here, and he has proofs for this from various verses in Tanakh. You'll find this in the English here in the source sheet. Says Rav Chaim Kanievsky, Derech HaKochav Miyakov, this star that comes from Yaakov Shevet Yisrael, Katuv HaRambam, Perak Yuralef Malachim, right? Derech Kochav Miyakov, Zeh David. This is King David. Vakam Shevet Yisrael, Zeh Mashiach. This is Mashiach. So the star coming from Yaakov is King David, and this scepter not leaving Israel, that's the King Mashiach. And he says the same thing as is explained in Midrash Agada. V'tzarech tam lama al David amar derech kochav mi Yaakov, ve'al Mashiach amar v'kam shevet Yisrael. How do you know from this language that one refers to King David, which is later on in history, is later in history from this point, and later on still is the story of is Mashiach, who's going to come, God willing, soon. So how do you know that one refers to one and the other refers to the other? So this is where Rav Chaim sparkles. Yesh Lomar, Shemal Levar Gimel Avdalim Shebein David LeMashiach. There are three differences between King David and Mashiach. Echad, Shedavid Mitchila Kishinimshach Lo Melech Klal. King David at first was not seen as a king at all. Rak Achar Kach Mitchil Limloch Al Yehuda Zayin Shanim. Then he became a king over Yehuda for 7 years. And then he became the king of all of the Jews. Of Al Mashiach Yimloch Miyad Al Kulam. Mashiach will be the king of all the Jews immediately. Ulzeh Amar Bedor Derech Ka'adam Bedorech Atu Ad Shemegia Al Mashiach Amar V'Kam Shemiyad Kam Al Makomo. So about Mashiach it says he's going to be immediate. V'chiluk Bet, and the second difference between Mashiach and King David, David lo melech ela al Yisrael. King David was only the king over the Jews. Mashiach yishlot al kol haolam, and Mashiach is going to be the king over the whole world. Ozeh amar b'David kochav, and that's why it says about David that he was like a star. She'enu ela kamo kochav hamir b'komo. The star only has its own, as its light that it shines from that spot. The Mashiach Amar Shevet, but with Mashiach, regarding Mashiach, the Torah says he's like a Shevet. He's the scepter. Shemoshel al kol haolam b'Shevet mushla. He rules over the whole world with the scepter. Gimel, and the third difference between King David and Mashiach, she Malchut David ba al yedei she Amei Yisrael bakshu melech. Shmuel. With King David, he became a king because he's actually the second king, but Shaul and then David became kings because the people asked incorrectly from Shmuel to have a king. Kamashi Katuv b'Sanhedrin, it says in the Gemara Sanhedrin, Kalkulu, they made a mistake. Rekdimu et yedehem al yedei zeh huchrach Shmuel lahamlich et Shaul v'David. So it's because the Jewish people erred, made a mistake, that Shmuel had to give them this king of Shaul and David, and that's sort of an inferior way of getting a king. They did it wrong. They shouldn't have asked for one. Mashiach Yimloch, but when Mashiach Mashiach, as opposed to Mashiach, Yimloch Kishigia Zman Hamlucha. When his time comes, that's when he's going to be the king. Doesn't matter if you ask for him, we don't ask for him, we want him, we don't want him. He's going to be the king when it's his time to be the king. Az Yimoch al Yedei Kulam, and then he's going to be the king over everybody. Gam al Yedei HaTalmud Chacham Shezu Ikar Mitzvah Shinui Melech Ukvar Katav Rabbeinu B'Chai Parshat Vayechi As Rabbeinu Bachai, he's quoting now in Parshat Vayechid. It says, "The Yaakov Nikra al Shem Amei Haaretz." When we are sometimes the Jewish people are called Yaakov, and sometimes we're called Yisrael. So the comment there is that we're called Yaakov when we are Am Yisrael, when we're not, the Jews who are not on the higher level of learning. The Yisrael Nikra al Shem HaTalmud Chacham. And so when it says that we're going to have a king over Yisrael, that the scepter is coming from Yisrael, it means that he's going to be the king over the Talmidei Chachamim as well. L'chein Amar b'David miYaakov Mashiach Amar mi Yisrael, and that's what it means that David, who was the who was only able to rule only the Jewish people, and wasn't able, and he had people, even Talmidei Chachamim, who eventually would rebel against him. He made mistakes, etc. That's not going to be the case with Mashiach. That's why Mashiach in our pasuk here it said that's the scepter that comes from Yisrael, means it's the scepter that comes from the holy body of our intellectual giants, of our Talmidei Chachamim, and even they will follow in the lead of the Mashiach. So again, these fascinating, deep ideas are just some of the thoughts that we can learn from this beautiful parsha. What's going to be when Mashiach comes? How important are the holidays? What indicates somebody's greed? A lot of lessons, a lot of things we can learn how to change our behavior for the better, especially as these 3 weeks begin, and we want to improve in time for Tisha B'Av. God willing, last year's Tisha B'Av was the last one that we'll ever have to fast. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great rest of your week, and Shabbat Shalom as well.